Welcome to the Woman's Current. Is the tide turning? I'm Sylvia Beckerman.
And I'm Molly Wadzik. Together, we're exploring how women support women across generations, experiences, and perspectives.
From baby boomers to millennials and beyond, we're asking, are we lifting each other up? And how do we keep the tide moving forward?
Each week, we'll dive into real conversations with women who are reshaping the current and reflect on what those stories mean for all of us.
So let's dive in. Let's get started.
It's not about women abandoning themselves to be caretakers in whatever way that looks like, right? Whether it's their kids, their parents, their jobs, their spouses, whatever that is. But it's actually women addressing their own goals, dreams, hopes, achievements, all of those things, while also being able to do those things. And I think that's a big piece that maybe, society is missing as a whole right now, is that understanding.
Today on the Woman's Current, we're talking about the kind of change that starts quietly and ends up changing everything. Our guest, Lindsay Wyman, is the executive director of Mercy Learning Center, a place where women come for education, for support, and very often for a second chance. Mercy's mission is simple and profound: educate a woman, empower a family. Every day, Lindsay witnesses women learning English, earning their high school diploma, building skills, and gaining the confidence to step into their own lives in a new way. And the ripple effect is extraordinary. From mothers to children to entire communities. We're thrilled to have Lindsay here today to talk about what happens when women come together to lift each other up, and how a single woman's courage to learn can reshape a whole future. And boy, does it ever. Lindsay, thank you so much for joining us today. This is going to be special. I want to start off by
Absolutely.
Anyone who doesn't know Mercy Learning Center, what is the mission and how did it even, what inspired the creation?
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you for having me. It's so nice to be here and talk about Mercy, which is actually one of my very favorite things to do. And so the mission of Mercy Learning Center is about empowering women, right? And we empower women through primarily education, but then through all of the things that you mentioned, right? So it's building community, helping women have the skill set to be able to do things outside of their education. And then also we have a fully state licensed early childhood center for the women's children. So we have all kinds of little kids in our building too, about 88 of them this year, which is incredible, ages 3 months to 5 years old. So that is a very, very big piece of what we do, because we know that childcare is one of the greatest barriers to women getting an education or working. And so it all started with two educators back in 1987 who had two women in this shared community space. And they were teaching them English and helping them to get a better job. And now we have over 450 women registered currently in our programs, still in downtown Bridgeport. And like I said, 88 children too. So we are a very busy place and have grown exponentially since 1987.
Can you tell me what is the makeup of how many women did you just say?
Over 450 of them this
Okay,
year.
so what is the makeup of these women? Because they come from a variety of backgrounds.
Yeah. So many of our women, I'd say maybe in the range of, 80% of our women are immigrants to this country. And whether they have just immigrated in the past couple of years or whether they have immigrated a long time ago, many of them are from different countries and therefore do not speak English as their first language. And then a small percentage of our women also are native-born English-speaking women that for whatever reason did not get the opportunity because of, various traumas, personal situations to graduate from high school. And our women currently are anywhere from age 18, and our oldest student ever is 83. This year, our oldest student is 74, so it is never too late. Always an opportunity for learning and changing and empowering. Yeah, we have over 17 languages spoken in this building right now, women from over 47 different countries. Yeah.
Yeah, Lindsay, as a mom a recently divorced mom who has had to rebuild my life from the ground back up, I know how intimidating that very first step can be. And that's from me speaking as someone who has a lot more privileges than I imagine most of the women who come through your doors. I'm curious how you meet women in that moment when they're still doubting whether or not they even deserve support. How do you meet them when they first walk through your doors?
Yeah, that's a great question because so many of our women come to us having had extremely varied circumstances and with that, many different traumas. Unfortunately, also being a center for women, we have a lot of women here who have, been experienced as victims of domestic or sexual violence. And then also, immigration trauma, racial trauma, many, many different things, educational trauma for a lot of our students who were born and raised in this country and were told they would never do it, that they were just not the type to go to college or the type to be successful, right? So that happens a lot too. But our women come to us with a lot of different goals. So graduating from high school is one of the goals, but it's certainly not the only one. So many of our women come to us and they want to learn English to be able to help their kids with their homework. That's a big one that we hear a lot, or to be able to communicate better in the community because for a lot of immigrant families, the children end up being the de facto interpreters and translators because the kids are more immersed in English on a daily basis through the public schools. Um, and so when women come to register for us, everybody gets a placement test, so we know exactly where everybody is. And then we have individual meetings with them to try to figure out why they're coming to us, what their work schedule is, whether they work, what ages their kids are, and how we can really help them in a holistic manner so that we make sure to meet people where they are and then take them from there. And, having high school graduates is a wonderful indicator of what we do, and we do have many of those every year, but it's not the only triumph that we have. We have many other small triumphs that happen on a daily basis here.
How did how do these women connect with one another? Do they find commonality, and how do they find it?
That's a great question because, of course, they come from so many backgrounds, cultures, religions, languages. But you would be surprised, in our very first level one English class that we have, which is, a lot of folks who speak not a word of English before they come in this building. We have women from many different countries who come from all over the globe and a teacher who speaks only English. And so, although it is an English immersive experience, we also try to do a lot of different modalities to make sure that we're meeting the women where they are. But they very, very quickly find this innate sense of community. And I think it's one of the most beautiful things I've found about working here the past few years is that women are so good at community, right? We are so good at connecting. We are so good at helping each other. And, there's a couple of things that we laugh about as international languages here. So once a month, a lot of the classrooms try to do what's called a community lunch. So once a month on Fridays, they will have a community lunch where you're certainly not required to bring anything, but if you can, you do. And everybody brings a different food. And so for some folks, they'll, bring pizza. And for other folks, they will make these unbelievable dishes from around the world. And so food is an international love language, right? And so are things like, marriages or babies. The way that pregnant women are treated in our space is just so beautiful and so loving and so all encompassing. And so, I think I've talked to Sylvia about this story before, but one of our English language learning classrooms had a woman in it who was giving birth in a couple of months, and they threw her a baby shower. And it was one of the most beautiful expressions of women in the world, right? Every culture, every religion, every country has different things that they do to celebrate a new life. And all of our students brought that to this little baby shower, right? Some knitted booties, some made clothes and quilts, some bought presents at the store. Everybody did something, some made food. And the woman who was giving birth, she said, when I came to this country, I knew no one. I didn't know anybody. I had my husband, and that was it. And she's from the Muslim religion, and where women and men are very separate in what they do. And she said, but now I feel that I have this group of American sisters. And that is one, something that I'll never forget. And she's here now. She came back after she had her baby. Her daughter is 2, and she's in her early childhood, and she's still working towards her goals. But I think that things like that, one of the things I think I wish that everybody in America, particularly right now, could remember is that we are more alike than we are different. And sure, we come from all over and we speak different languages and we don't agree on everything. But there are fundamental things like bringing a new child into this world, or, the community lunch and having food as an international love language, that I think we could all take something away from. So that's just a couple examples of the ways that our women connect, but they cheer each other on like you would not believe. It's really amazing.
That I love that idea of a place where women aren't competing or comparing, like you're just showing up for each other. It's almost as if
Yes.
like you remove the whole layer
Mhm.
of patriarchy
Yes.
and of power, right? Like it
Yes.
allows women to flourish under very specific conditions that you just don't get like out in the wild.
Yes, absolutely true. And I think, we as a staff try to really cultivate that in everything that we do. It's really important to us that everybody who walks through these doors is able to show up as their authentic selves. In whatever way that looks like. And again, from, 47 countries of the world, and our staff is very diverse too. It's a tall order, but we have, a very strong set of values here that we operate off of. And I think it builds a beautiful community. I wish I have a teenage daughter, and sometimes I think, I wish there were more spaces like this for all of us. Because I think you're absolutely right. Speaking to the patriarchy and everything else, like that's what we need.
Well, as I've told you before, what you do for these women, and the fact it would be nice if women understood that there's really there's more similarities, there's more common threads than not. And you have women who have decided, because they've made the decision to learn, to educate. Um, and yet they're in an environment where they might not be able to speak to anyone in the same language, but somehow, as being a woman who has made this decision, there's commonality right there, aside from the fact of having a family, maybe learning this, taking care of this. I mean, you have so many different things that are in common, that if you don't talk about it and don't share the stories, even in different languages, it comes up. Now, one of the things that I've heard throughout from women who have suffered from uh, being taken away from their families, who have been in cults, who have been all over the world, we the one commonality that they say is that their family, their father, they learned that education is the most important thing. And education changes lives. But at Mercy, it seems to change entire families. What does that ripple effect? What is that like?
Well, there's so much of this research that we actually talk about all the time when we talk about, how does empowering and educating a woman change not only their family, right, which is the first piece, is that small microcosm, but then the community of Bridgeport at large and the state of Connecticut. And then what if that happened everywhere, and how could that blossom? And I think it's a couple of different things, and this research has actually been done globally outside of the United States. I know Melinda Gates has done a lot of this work, and others as well, through her foundation Pivotal Ventures. But really what we've learned from all of this research is that educating and empowering a woman has such intense ripple effects, as you mentioned before, Sylvia, to their family. And so many of our women here will say, I'm doing this for my kids, or my kids are doing it and then they tell me that I can do it too. We had just had a recent graduate who just finished her NEDP, which is another way to get your high school diploma. And she said, it took me a while and I had to start and I had to stop. And, I have children, I have a job, I have a spouse, all of those things. And that gets in the way. We say here a lot when life is lifing, and life's a lot. But she never gave up because she talked about actually when she spoke at our recent benefit, she said she would sit at the kitchen counter with her eighth grade son and he would do his work and she would do hers. And that was her motivating factor. And I think if we had more families and more, situations and where women felt confident, educated, and empowered, we could just catapult everything. I mean, again, the research shows that not only does it help their families, it helps their communities, better jobs, that helps the economy. It actually helps the socio-political structure as well. So there are benefits to what we do that are so far beyond even the things that we see here in this building every day.
Lindsay, have what ways have you seen women's children respond to or mirror that new confidence? I
Yeah.
imagine that's a very special, unique position you have with the kids in the same building, right? Being able to
Yeah.
see in real time how it's impacting them.
Yeah, it's first of all, it's absolutely adorable and fabulous when everybody comes in the morning. We call it our rush hour around 9 a.m. And everybody is coming in the building, coming and going. And, there are some crying and some tantrums, but mostly excitement all over the place. And it's really special because some of the kids that are in preschool and can verbalize it a little bit more will say, I'm going to school and my mom is too. And so it's so nice because particularly when women are new to this country, right? And they are, have likely, depending on their circumstance, experienced immigration trauma in some way. And so have these kids who have come here and had to change their lives. And so for the moms to be in the same building with their children and the children to be in the same building as their mom and know that we are here not only taking care of them as the children, but also we're taking care of their mom upstairs. And I think it's a really, really beautiful and motivating thing for the kids to see that, look at this, my mom is doing this. My mom is learning and growing and improving herself, and I am too. And that's how we're going to kind of move forward together. I think it's a really beautiful thing and such a reflection of caretaking, and what that looks like and how children can benefit from that lifelong. And again, the kids in our building are only up to 5 years old, but my experience from, anecdotal information that the women have shared with me is that it's also benefiting, for instance, the eighth grader I was just talking about, who also sees that his mom is going towards her dreams and not letting anything stop her, and life is lifing, but she's still keeping going.
And life is lifing. I mean, I know this is ridiculous, um, envious. I mean, that we just wouldn't it be a different world if something like this existed throughout,
I
that
know.
people understood, especially the education piece and the childcare piece and putting it all together and having children be proud of what their moms and the moms not thinking that they're taking time away from their children.
Yeah, yeah. I think, as caretakers, we often think it's either I take care of people or I take care of myself. But I think part of this fundamental global research that has come out is actually it's not about women abandoning themselves to be caretakers in whatever way that looks like, right? Whether it's their kids, their parents, their jobs, their spouses, whatever that is. But it's actually women addressing their own goals, dreams, hopes, achievements, all of those things, while also being able to do those things. And I think that's a big piece that maybe, society is missing as a whole right now is that understanding.
Well, do you find that mentorship and encouragement among your leaders and volunteers becomes just as important as academics?
Yes, absolutely. I think, I always say to our director of adult ed, Academics are so important, and truly, we are a state recognized adult education facility. We want to make sure that we're keeping up with the standards and deliver the best possible education. But we're not even going to get that education to the students unless we build the community and unless they trust us first. And particularly with women, and particularly with the women in the scope of the work that we're doing, there's a lack of trust for whatever reason. Potentially sometimes it's with men because of their own cultural, traumatic, etc. experiences. But also, sometimes it's with race. They have had a really bad, educational experience in this country. And they have a distrust of certain races or just the education system in general. So, first and foremost, the thing that we do here is build community. And we do that by meeting people where they are and understanding that not everyone is the same. It's not a cookie cutter approach. And yes, we might need to teach, long division, but long division is going to look different depending on where you come from. And so I think that is really primarily the thing we do best.
So you're building confidence, you're building, you're showing compassion. Tell me about a woman who comes to you, is a little hesitant, probably scared. How do you how do you make that person comfortable?
It takes a long time, especially for those folks who have, like I mentioned, come to us with previous experiences that have been really negative. So one woman that comes to mind who we're working with currently this year is a woman who was born in this country and speaks the language and dropped out of high school, I believe, in eighth grade, or well, dropped out of middle school in eighth grade and didn't make it to high school. And, she'll tell us that there were many teachers along the way who told her there's no way that she could do this, that she wasn't cut out for it, that she shouldn't try for college, and she was stupid, you know?
Nice.
Yeah, very encouraging. And, she's very honest that she had a tricky home life when she was that age and that she didn't make great choices. I'm like all of us don't make great choices when we're, in high school and in our teenage years.
Or
Um,
older.
yeah, or older. And she was then incarcerated for a couple of years and then got out and raised her children. And she was at a session in which our student success advisor was presenting and, was talking about this new program that we have that is a little bit hybrid. So it allows for both work from home and then work in the center here ourselves. And she said, I can't do that because I'm not smart enough and whatever. And our student success advisor, Anika, who is unbelievable, was able to really sit down and connect with her on a personal level and just ask her to try, right? Just try, just give it a shot, see how it goes. And she has surprised us all in how much that she has been able to do. And, life is still lifing, things are still coming up for her, but she keeps showing up. And every time she comes in the front doors, she's a very loud and boisterous woman. She's lovely. And every time she comes in with hugs, and I'm so happy to be here. And when she first came in here, she was very reticent. And she wasn't really willing to trust any of us because I think in her head, she was thinking this is going to be just like the other thing. Now, months later, she comes in, she's hugging, she's ready to go, and she's going to get there. Maybe it won't be the quickest high school diploma that ever was, but she is working. And all we keep telling her is how much we believe in her and that we know she can do this. And when she's ready, we'll be here.
And Lindsay, that leads me to another thought I had earlier is what are you seeing in the differences in how women talk about themselves? Like not just what you're seeing in the milestones they are achieving, but how is it affecting their self-esteem and their self-identity? What do you see in your program?
Yeah. We really, when folks come to us first, we talk a lot about growth mindset, right? So you may have been told, as this woman I was speaking of previously, that you can't do it, that you're stupid, that there's no way this is you, et cetera, right? But what we work on is if somebody says, I can't do that, or I can't say that, or, we have a lot of math phobia too, which I identify with, but there's no way I can do that problem, right? We say there's no way you can do that problem right now. There's no way you can do that problem yet, right? And so it's sort of teaching them that it's not an absolute. and what they have maybe previously believed about themselves, or what they are, what society has told them to believe about themselves is not true. And they can change that. And little by little by little, you see that start to develop in the way they talk about themselves. And then often when they graduate, they write a reflection. And the reflection often shows, them say, when I started this, I felt XYZ. And then towards the end, they talk about how empowered they feel, how ready for the next challenge. And so slowly over time, that narrative that they're telling themselves really, really changes. And it's really powerful.
Well, I was going to ask you, how do you think women who come through Mercy see themselves differently now as role models, even leaders?
Yeah.
Talk about that. Let's talk about what where some of these women are and how they actually feel.
But then we'll say, one example I think off the top of my head is a lot of women, like I mentioned, come to us and they say, I want to learn English so that I can help my child with their homework or talk to my child's teacher, right? That's one of the main ones that we get. And one of our women was in one of our volunteer tutor groups in a small group, and she was really having difficulty because she has a child that has special needs, and she did not know how to join, a PPT meeting. She did not know what an IEP meant. And so one of our tutors, mentored her, connected with our adult education folks. And after a while, when she had learned some more English and she felt like she had the support, she was then able to participate in these meetings. And now she feels very comfortable advocating for what her child needs. And I think, again, that's just one small example of when you tell someone you believe in them and when they start to believe in themselves and that internal narrative shifts. It's not just what they can do in this building, when they graduate, or, what they achieve here or a test score. They carry it with them into the rest of their life, and then they empower others. So again, that ripple effect that we're talking about, whether it's their own children or women in their community, at their church, at their temple, at their mosque, and then how that sort of moves forward from there. So, it's the possibilities are really limitless. Like, there isn't a prescribed way that our women show us, I feel confident now and ready to lead in the world. It's really just about what they want and then how that manifests itself in their lives.
And I love that. It's a good bridge to talking about how the education piece really changes where women's standing in public life, right? It's almost like the whole ecosystem around women shifts. Like, they're going to parent differently, they're going to advocate differently. And I think of it almost like, when you talk about the ripple effect, this survival architecture of when women are educated, resource connected, the stability for children. That piece that you have, the childcare piece, so women aren't splitting themselves in two, but having the children in, watching their moms do it. Stability for children just feels like such a foundational piece for, a healthy society, I guess. But I know that Sylvia, moving on to talking about just that, how big that education piece is for women standing in public life. I would love to hear more of Lindsay's thoughts on that. Did you have any specific question on that?
No, go right ahead, Lindsay, because what I'd love to hear is some of the stories about women who, yes, they didn't think they could really do this, and your volunteers and your tutors got them through that initial piece.
Hmm.
What about the women who didn't think they could do this, had a small goal in their head, it was just a
Hmm.
small goal,
Right.
and wound up doing so much more than they ever thought? And I know that sometimes there's no time limit for these women to get their high school diploma if that's what they're looking to do,
Hmm.
because uh life living, is that what you keep saying?
Life keeps lifing. Yes.
Life keeps lifing, and you never know
Right.
what's going to get in the way, or you think it will. So I'd love to hear about some of the women who just went on to, whether they brought their family back together, whether they wound up going out and getting a job that they never thought they could, or they followed a passion that they really never spoke about because they didn't think they could do anything.
Yes. I'd say that story really happens a lot here because we have a lot of women who, when they first come here, they say, I just want to learn enough English so that I can be in a parent teacher conference or order what I need to at the market or talk to, my children's doctor, for instance. And then they do, and they get that skill, and then they believe in themselves and they say, well, maybe I could do a little bit more. And then maybe I could do a little bit more. So not everybody who comes here starts off thinking, I'm going to get my high school diploma, right? A lot of folks start and they say, I just want to get through level 1 and 2 English, and then that's enough. And then they end up staying. And what I tell a lot of our, donors and folks that are involved in our organization is it's not like K through 12 education, right? It's not a linear line. You don't go up all at once. The woman who spoke at our graduation ceremony last year talked about how she stopped and started many times. She had a sick parent. Her husband lost his job. She had to work for a couple years. So I think, there are so many little things. And then there's a lot that we do here that doesn't involve just adult education, right? So we have voting workshops, we have citizenship classes. So for those folks that become citizens, one of our students was so celebratory last year because she voted for the very first time after becoming a citizen and living here for many years. We do a lot of workshops on many, many different things. And we have a social services department who connects our students here with outside resources in the community, of which the Bridgeport community is extremely rich with nonprofit resources and incredible organizations. So we make sure to connect everybody. So there's a lot of sort of out of the classroom wins that don't necessarily happen just with the education piece. But of course, the education is what the foundation of our work is, right? Like I mentioned, we are a state recognized adult ed facility. We do have a state licensed early childhood center. And so all of those things really speak to the integrity and the innovation of the programs that we offer. One of the other things that we're trying this year, and we're always constantly trying to match what the needs are out in the community. So if women are telling us, there's no way I can get to you for classes, we don't love doing virtual classes because they're just not as connective. You don't get that sense of community. But what we do is this year we're piloting this hybrid class. So they do meet in person, but they can also get what's called proxy hours of adult education while they're getting, towards their high school diploma. So it's a little bit of a combination of both. But there are, I can't even tell you, countless women who come in here and say, I just want enough English to do this. And then they end up graduating. And I think one of the cool things about it is, too, every year, like around beginning, middle of May, a bunch of students will come back if they've graduated from community college or from college. And the best part is they'll bring their kids back. So their kids will come back that our early childhood director had when they were infants, and they will be graduating from high school or graduating from 8th grade and come back here to talk about it and celebrate with their caps and gowns. So it's really special.
Yeah, I'd say that is pretty special because you're not you're building a community, and that ripple effect continues and continues and continues.
Right.
And then the women and the families that you have currently get to see
Yes,
what can be done by people who started off in the same place where they are, you know,
exactly.
and wanting to do something for whatever reason, whether it's to learn English, whether it's to be able to help their children, whether it's be able to fit in the community and talk to other people or just meet. We keep talking about the ripple effect, and it just keeps moving along, and that is fantastic. When you think about the women at Mercy, the students, the staffs, the volunteers, what gives you hope?
Oh, so much gives me hope. And it's a hard world right now to feel hopeful in. As we all know, it's challenging,
Putting
right?
it mildly.
Yeah, totally mildly. But, I think what I keep joking about, and it's funny because, we just had Halloween and then we're coming up on the holidays, and I keep saying we're going to double down on joy this year. That's our big thing. We're going to double down on joy because the world is hard. And for our students here who are immigrants and women, and people who rely on public benefits like SNAP, the world is even harder. Um, and as staff and tutors and volunteers, we can do what we can, but we can't fix it. And so that's something we've really, as a staff, we've talked about and how to kind of hold space for that fact in today's world and still do everything we can in this building to stay true to our mission, to continue to educate and empower these women with the hope that the world will not always be like this. And, one of our vision is that these women will be the ones to go out into the world and learn, lead, and shape their communities. And I think that that gives me hope. It gives me hope that the values that we are espousing in this building will be the values that lead in our communities, and that will leak out. And some days, it's harder to keep that in mind than others. But this, the hope that we are creating is in this building, and the hope that there will be better days to come, the hope that these women will have different opportunities, and that as women, our rights will be acknowledged and respected in a way that now they're currently not in this country.
Love that, Lindsay, because it's almost like it doesn't matter what's happening I mean, it does matter obviously, but as far as like the joy and the hope, you're building community.
Yes.
And women having community, no matter what's going on and the external forces that are out of our control, like having that community means that the women there can stay the course. I I just I love that the community piece is something that like the government can't take away from us. So
No. And, I say to my staff and to the students, like, we can't give up. We don't give up. We just keep marching forward. And some days it's really hard, one foot in front of the other, but we keep doing it and we keep trying and we keep going with the hope that things will be different, that they may not always be like this. And taking the onus and the accountability on ourselves, staff, volunteers, tutors, students, to make this world different and to stand up for what we believe in, which we know is the sense of community and being inclusive and encouraging belonging, and that in fact is what is going to change things and not, some of the divisiveness that's currently happening.
And for those listening, what's one simple thing any of us can do to support another woman's journey?
Mm, my gosh, there are so many. Um, I think that if you have somebody in your circles who, and no matter what, you don't have to know somebody like the women in our building, but anybody in your circles, it's cultivating community, as Molly said. It is letting each other know that things are tough and that days are hard. And it doesn't matter who you are or where your privilege comes from or what color your skin or what country you're from. Building community and not giving up. And one small movement in the right direction. If you have hours to volunteer, volunteer in the way that is meaningful to you to move another woman's life forward in whatever way that looks like. If you have financial means, donate to those causes are supporting women from the ground up. And I think all of us can do something. Um, it just, you want to identify with the cause that is important to you and really remember all the intense global research that's been done around empowering women from the ground up and educating women makes everything better. Like I said, economies, communities, families, all of the above. And so just doing one small thing that works for your life and can, like we said, have this intense ripple effect that you may not even be able to see yet.
One small thing. That's all
Yep.
it takes.
Small thing. All
And
the
before
small
we
things.
I love it. Molly, before we end, is there anything else you wanted to ask Lindsay?
I don't think ask. I think I'm just like yeah, how do you scale this up to
I
every
know, I asked her that last time we spoke.
I
copy
know.
paste,
I
put it
know.
in every county because it is true what you say. Like what is this? I'm sure you have the research. I don't have it in front of me, but some research indicates, right, that like children's well-being and their outcomes are so
Hmm.
dependent on their mother's own mental health and well-being and status in
Yes.
life. And so
Yes.
when a woman rises, everyone arises around her, like not
Hmm.
just because she's fulfilling some self-sacrificial ideal, but because she finally has the tools and support. And how do we get it everywhere?
Yeah.
How do you
It's interesting. We're in our 38th year this year. And so coming up on our 40th in a couple of years, which is really exciting. And we've talked a lot about that. What does next steps look for like for us? We have this big, beautiful old school building that we currently live in downtown Bridgeport, which is phenomenal. And, I came from also working in the Stanford nonprofit community before this. And, someone said to me when I was coming to Mercy, wow, they're so amazing. And we could definitely use one of those in Stanford. And I think that's the thing. I think it's now sort of strategically thinking about how this model looks in different places and whether it is replicable because we are very, very unique in the state of Connecticut, at least. I'm not saying that there's none other in the country that I know of, but we are a very unique model. And I think it's something that is really, really powerful that we can replicate. Think that's something to think about. We're also thinking about how we might be able to expand our building in the next couple of years because we're sort of growing out of it. We don't have room for more folks, but we always have a wait list, so we know the need is there. So that's definitely something to think about within the next couple of years is sort of how we grow and how we can accommodate more women and make sure that we are shifting and growing according to what the women's needs are in the community, so that we can keep addressing. Because I was saying at an event the other day, the women of 1987 when Mercy started are not the women of 2025. Not even the women of 2019 are the women of 2025. So it's our job to be constantly adapting and changing to meet those needs in the community.
Well, Lindsay, I have to thank you for what you do, for what Mercy Learning Center does, the empowering women, giving them the chance, giving them a voice, their own voice, and being able to have the confidence built within themselves, and then building their families and communities and that ripple effect. Before we go, where can people find out more about Mercy Learning?
Definitely. So we are on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn as Mercy Learning Center Bridgeport, and then also our website, mercylearningcenter.org.
Lindsay, again, I want to thank you so much for this conversation and for everything that you, your staff, your volunteers, donors, and the women themselves
Yes,
do. So,
absolutely. Thank you so
thank
much.
you.
It's really been a pleasure speaking with you all.
It was so much. But what stayed with you the most from Lindsay's story?
What stayed with me the most from Lindsay's story? I think just more evidence of this idea that educating and empowering women is the number one thing we can do that's going to change the futures for the whole society. I know that sounds like a really big claim, but uh, without moms having the opportunity to have dignity and control of their own futures and access to education, especially for women who came to this country as immigrants, who are survivors of domestic violence, having childcare, free or affordable childcare, and not having to choose between whether or not you're going to prioritize taking care of your kid or making a better future for yourself for your children. I am just so inspired by this model that their program has, and the piece of community. I mean, I think, the education piece is the whole foundation, right? But without that community around the women, it's so much easier to give up.
Exactly. And the diverse number of women that wind up finding that commonality, and there always is. Just because somebody looks like that, and another person looks like that, and this one speaks that language, and this one speaks, a different language, and this one is a few years younger or older, there's a commonality, which I think is beautiful that they build on. Um, And some women who came to Mercy looking not just for skills, but for confidence. What does confidence mean in the context of empowerment when you're listening to her?
Yeah, I think confidence, when Lindsay spoke, I heard a lot of undercurrents of the way that they even move through the building after they've been in the program for a few months, right? Like from going to being very wary and distrustful to understanding that you it is safe to trust, that they have built a program and community within that building that ripples out to the community outside of them, that they can trust other women. They can trust that community. And when you have women around you and mentors around you and access to resources, that trust builds confidence. And I think confidence is often talked a lot about something that you have to work on and practice, and it comes from inside of you, and only you are in control of it, right? But it's really hard to be confident when you don't have a support system around you.
Yes, believe me, I understand that, lived that, done that, been there. What they give to these women is, to me, you can't put a price on it, even though it is free. Um, do you see this as a form of generational activism, even if it's quiet or personal?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that anytime that you're participating in society in a way that is prioritizing women's well-being and women's education and just building a female centered community, right? I think that's activism in and of itself. I don't see it as a generational thing. I love to hear the age differences between the women who walk through the doors when she says you have grandmothers and you have teenagers and you have young moms, middle-aged moms, whatever. I think having that intergenerational community within the program is a form of activism that looks different. And sorry, I'm kind of trying to get my thoughts around it. This idea of generational activism, the intergenerational activism, right? Being able to learn
Yes.
from the women in the community, being seeing women in their 70s go back to do it too. I can imagine walking through those doors as a young mom and that feeling of wanting to give up just completely washing away once you see that there's other women who are older than you who are still trying to achieve and find stability in their own lives.
Well, I think what Mercy Learning Center shows us is that empowerment isn't abstract. It's built one woman, one story, one act of support at a time. What a conversation. That's it for this episode of The Women's Current. Is the Tide Turning?
If this conversation sparks something in you, we want to hear from you. What's this week's current moment? Tell us on Instagram at The Women's Current. Share it with a friend. And don't forget to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube.
Join us each week as we explore how women are supporting each other and where do we go from here.
Until next time, I'm Molly Wadzik.
And I'm Sylvia Beckerman. Thanks for listening. This has been a Life of Prey production.